profitable flights. Hillary Barsky, Fox News.
This land is your land, and this land is
Woody
my
Guthrie's
land.
endearing song celebrating America's beauty turns 80 next week
the redwood
and the Woody Guthrie Center marking the anniversary with a concert in Town Hall. And that'll be in New York City. Guthrie is believed to have written the song on February 23rd, 1940.
Mescla Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with a true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine. A bistro look that feels like home. Their menu features local and traditional flavors with a twist. From their famous Kelaguen Hapa to fresh ahi poke salad and their award-winning barbecue ribs. Mescla takes your favorite local dishes and serves them with extra flair that you'll only find at Mescla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Stop by their newest location in the Grand Plaza Hotel in Tumon. For reservations, call 969-2652. Mescla, a true taste of Guam.
If you've ever struggled for breath, you know what a scary experience it is. Whether you have asthma, emphysema, COPD, lung cancer, or another respiratory illness, the right medical treatment makes all the difference. GRMC's Pulmonology Clinic has the latest technology and respiratory equipment, staffed by world-class pulmonologists. Make an appointment today with GRMC's Pulmonology Clinic and start breathing easier. GRMC, where patients are partners.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of our free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So the bear arms part of it is being tested right now at the Superior, as you were at the United States Supreme Court. I've talked about this more than once, but I think it bears one more discussion here. I have I have something from the World Radio blog here, and it's a dialogue. Mary Reichard is the host, and she says, "I'm Mary Reichard. Last week, the Supreme Court heard the biggest Second Amendment case of the term. The case is from New York, where firearms restrictions allow you to have a pistol or revolver in your home. But the license allows that you have to have that pistol or revolver is tied to your address, not to you and wherever you go, except in very limited situations. For example, say you want to take your gun to the shooting range, as gun owners tend to do. You can do that, but under these conditions, you have to lock up the gun, unload it and in a container, and then carry the ammunition separately. It's important to note these restrictions are not in place now." Let's listen to the lawyers on each side speaking outside the courtroom. First, Paul Clement, very famous Supreme Court litigant, lawyer for the gun owners. "Clement, my clients have been litigating this case for over 5 years. The reason they filed this lawsuit was to vindicate their rights under the Second Amendment. Up until the point that the Supreme Court granted certiorari in this case, the city of New York had resisted their efforts to vindicate their rights at every turn." That sounds like the city of New York, doesn't it? And then we've got Jim Johnson, who is a lawyer for the city of New York. New York City and New York State actually gave them everything that they had asked for before this argument. That was made very plain in this argument today. The case is moot. If you smell a wick, back to the article, if you smell a whiff of legal chicanery in the backstory, it's because, well, there's a bit of legal chicanery in the backstory. In this case, 3 gun owners, as well as New York State Rifle and Pistol Association, sought to have the city's gun restrictions declared unconstitutional. They made claims under the Second Amendment for gun rights and claimed the rules restricted their rights of free association and of travel. They lost in lower courts, and so the city left the restrictions in place. Back to Reichard, the narrator here, left the restrictions in place until the Supreme Court agreed to take the case. Then New York scrambled to undo the restrictions so it could argue the case is now moot. Moot, meaning nothing left to decide. That would avoid risking victories upholding other gun restrictions won in the lower courts. And the liberal justices all seem to think the case is moot. The liberal justices. That would be folks like the incredible Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Sonia Sotomayor. Let's see, we've got Justice Breyer over there, and one more female. I can't remember her name. Conservative Justice Samuel Alito didn't think it was moot. Listen to this exchange with the lawyer for the city, Richard Deering. Suppose the gun owners had won a judgment below that the old court violated the Second Amendment. And suppose that after that, one of the plaintiffs had made a trip to a firing range in, let's say, New Jersey, while there, decided to visit his mother for a couple of hours to take care of a few things for her. Would there be any law that he would violate? Deering, I don't think it's all that clear, because that question, those kinds of questions were never put at issue or litigated in the case, and so then Justice Alito comes back. Well, what you don't know whether there's any city law that would violate. Deering, I'm not aware of any city law that Alito. So then why is this case moot? Because they didn't get all they wanted. They wanted a declaration that the old law was unconstitutional. Period. Reichard, maybe they didn't get that declaration, but they did get everything else they wanted, such as traveling outside city limits. But pinning down exactly how direct and continuous that travel had to be was a sticking point. A coffee shop? Well, that's okay. But Justice Alito's visit to Mother caused Deering to stumble over how far to take that. Here's Justice Gorsuch taking it further. So we have no representations to us as to what is direct and continuous other than, quote, coffee, okay? Deering, coffee, what I can represent, because it's come up before, coffee, restrooms, food, gas, the kinds of things that you ordinarily would stop for in the course of travel. I hadn't considered the mother or mother-in-law example before. Deering said those other situations are for another case. So what they're arguing about here is under the old New York law that said you could go from your home to a firing range. What if on the way, let's say your home is, and down in the Battery, down in the financial district of Manhattan, and your firing range is at the north edge of the Bronx. And while you're driving up there, you have to answer to a urination summons. So you stop your car, go into the nearest McDonald's, relieve yourself, and come back. Have you violated New York law? You didn't go straight to the firing range. You're out there wandering around in McDonald's with a firearm. Horror of horrors. Gorsuch, but you're asking us to say there is no controversy now. Then to Chief Justice Roberts. Chief Justice Roberts is likely the deciding vote. He asked relatively few questions, but seemed to cast about for a way to call the case moot without limiting the gun owners in some way. I think this is a case in which Second Amendment advocates are going to score a big win. Okay, number 2 case today. That's a bankruptcy case. We can skip that. But this case, let's see, what's it called again? It's three folks versus the state of New York. I don't even have the name of it here, but you know which one I'm talking about. So here's what the argument is about. Here's what the Second Amendment says. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. That's the part that Mr. Justice Scalia read right out of the Second Amendment, much to my chagrin. But what's done is done. So then we go on to the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Well, keep and bear are not synonymous. To keep, I have a, let's say that what I have here in my hand is a 1911 45 pistol. And I have the ability under the latest Supreme Court case to keep this in my house for my own self-defense. But if I lived in New York, I couldn't strap that on a holster in plain view and go out to a vacant lot and set up some pop bottles and have some target practice. Couldn't do that. So, of course, the argument here is that the New York law is contrary to the Second Amendment because it doesn't allow people to bear arms. Well, if the Supreme Court gets a hold of this, there's a real good chance that the result will be something that the anti-gunners just hate. It may go beyond the boundaries of this particular case and come up with a ruling something like any person lawfully in possession of a firearm can carry that firearm anywhere that he wants to, with the only exceptions being those well stated in local law that don't violate the intent of the Second Amendment. That's a possibility. And that's why the anti-gunners are so scared. So they repealed the New York law, and then they're coming along saying, well, you know, these guys don't have any complaint because the law's repealed. They can carry their guns anywhere they want to. So we got to watch this one very carefully, very closely. If you are into guns and the Second Amendment, this is just about as big as Heller versus District of Columbia and McDonald versus Chicago. So needless to say, your ever popular host here on Tall Tales will keep you informed as to the progress of that case now that it's been through oral argument at the United States Supreme Court. Okay, disposing of the Second Amendment, I then reach for... I don't need Second Amendment protection to carry this blue pencil, but I have a feeling if the Daily News were to write an editorial about it, fat chance, they'd say Bob should not be able to have a blue pencil because he doesn't give us the blue star often enough. So here we are at Zemi-Ikotny. And, of course, we start out with what the Daily News cribbed from USA Today editorial board. That's first on the list. Daily News very seldom writes a local editorial, but today I took a certain sense of relief from this one. The title is, Billionaires Are Not All Unfit. And the thrust of the editorial is that there are 3 billionaires, you know, who are at least jousting for the position of President of the United States. Guys like Donald Trump. Let's see. We've got, what's Bloomberg's first name? Yeah, well, anyhow, Donald Trump, Bloomberg, and Steyer are all millionaires. Bloomberg and Steyer are on the Democrat side. Yeah, Michael Bloomberg. Michael Bloomberg is worth $53.4 billion. And Tom Steyer, who has just recently tossed his hat into the ring for the Democrat nomination, he's a real piker. He's only worth $1.6 billion. Wow. He'll probably be passing the hat outside the convention center. But anyhow, the Daily News here says that the fact that these guys are billionaires doesn't necessarily disqualify them from being president. Of course, I took a huge sigh of relief when I read this, given all of the residuals that I will probably be raking in when Tall Tales is syndicated. And I'm not even thinking about the possibilities of Tall Tales, the movie. I don't know if that should go on Netflix or Hulu. What do you think, Real Joe Cruz?
Both, sir.
Both. Tall Tales, Netflix and Hulu. Tall Tales, the movie. I don't know. There'd be a huge fight over who's going to play the host of Tall Tales. You know, yeah. Clint Eastwood would be perfect for the role.
I think so too.
Yeah, he's maybe just a little bit superannuated, but other than that, yeah, I'd vote for Clint Eastwood. So that's the Daily News. So if you want to read up any more about why being a millionaire would not make a person unfit to be president, be my guest. And go online and look at the Pacific Daily News, or before you wrap the fish in it, peek at what they erroneously labeled the editorial page. Okay, then we've got the Post. Post didn't exactly cover itself with glory yesterday. They wound up with a C-, which is something of a disappointment because the Post is usually pretty good with their editorials. I'm usually a fan of the Post. But this time it's help stop con artists and thieves from preying on our elders. They mentioned the magic word there, elders. In a span of less than 2 weeks since Thanksgiving morning, we've heard of at least 3 elderly Guam residents who've been victims of crimes. One is the owner of a barber shop in Dadido. Another victim is a bakery shop owner whose purse was taken while she was opening her shop. Footage of the suspect in the bakery premises was captured on video surveillance, but more than a week later, there has been no word of the suspect's capture. In this case, the victim wasn't physically harmed, not like the case at the barber shop. In a third example, someone allegedly stole the car of an elderly relative at Guma Tranquilidad, Manemco housing in Data as you were in Tumum, knowing it would be easy to do because the victim was in the hospital at the time. Wow, how low is, it's kind of like Limbo Rock. How low can you go? Stealing your relative's car when your relative is in the hospital. And then con artists can operate from afar, too. In addition to physical thefts, senior citizens can also fall victim to phone, email, internet scammers who operate unseen, sometimes from foreign soils. Phone scams, phone scams like calling up and telling the person on the other end of the line, if you want to buy a couch, I can give you a real good price on a couch. Are you interested? Yeah, that's a possible phone scam right there. Senior citizens are most likely to become the target of phone, email, and online fraudsters because they likely have savings, likely own their own home, and or have excellent credit, all of which make them attractive to con artists, according to the FBI. Now, here's the real punchline in this editorial. People who grew up in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s were generally raised to be polite and trusting. I'm going to repeat that sentence. People who grew up in the 1930s, 1940s, and 1950s were generally raised to be polite and trusting, according to the FBI. Well, you don't need the FBI to tell you that. Do you, Real Joe Cruz?
No, sir.
No way. Con artists exploit these traits, knowing that it's difficult or impossible for these people to say no, or just hanging up the phone, the Bureau added. And when elderly victims do report crimes, they often make poor witnesses. Con artists know the effects of age on memory. Now, I read an article about the effects of age on memory, but I can't remember what the article said. And that kind of reminds me of something about Branson, Missouri. You ever heard of Branson, Missouri, real Joe Cruz?
No, sir. Never heard of it.
Yeah, well, Branson, Missouri is a real hangout for old folks. If you back in the days of Lawrence Welk and people of that ilk, they all played the shows at Branson, Missouri. It's a great place for golden agers. So it's kind of like Vegas without gambling, but on a much smaller scale. So the saying in Vegas is, what goes down in Vegas stays in Vegas, right? Yeah, in Branson, Missouri, what goes down in Branson, nobody can remember. So anyhow, older folks have a little trouble with retaining things. In addition, the victims' realization they've been swindled may take weeks or likely months after contact with a fraudster. This extended time frame makes it even more difficult to remember details from the events, the FBI added. Robocalls are more than a nuisance. They turn a conversation into a heist by threatening our aged loved ones and stealing their hard-earned savings. Senator Bob Casey, a ranking member of the Senate's Committee on Aging. Con artists are feeling more emboldened than ever, spoofing law enforcement numbers and threatening seniors and others with arrest in order to scare them into immediately handing over funds. Then we have a sad case here. The committee held hearings in July after the proliferation of robocalls, against the proliferation of robocalls after the tragedy involving 82-year-old Marjorie Jones. Jones' family got worried when she told them she desperately needed $6,000 wired to her as soon as possible. A week later, while her family was still trying to figure out what was happening, Jones committed suicide, according to information provided to the Senate committee. After Jones' death, her family learned that criminals had been repeatedly calling her to demand money. They stole her entire life savings, forced her to take out a reverse mortgage, and cash in her life insurance. She was left with just $69 in her bank account when she took her own life, the committee stated. Boy, this is all pretty tragic. One of the best gifts for our elders this holiday season is neither sealed in an envelope nor gift wrapped. Often what our manamku, or elders, need most is our time. Time to find out what's going on in their lives and time to figure out how to intervene if they're being quietly scammed. So I don't know if they're talking about, the fraudsters on the phone talking about giving you a really good price on a couch or what. But anyhow, an interesting bit of writing. It's not an editorial. It's more like a caveat. No blue stars today. Sorry, folks. Okay, so now I'm going to go into the card. And I don't have any anonymous letters on the card for today. I know there was another one to Esther Agagi, but I'm going to practice what I've been preaching. I'm not going to give these anonymous letters the dignity of responding to them on the air, unless there's a really compelling reason to do it. I think the media has done a disservice to people in government positions when they take what may be nothing more than the complaints of an axe grinder and publicize them to the entire island. So, I don't know. We ever get any anonymous letters around here, Real Joe Cruz?
As a matter of fact, I got one today.
You got an anonymous letter?
I did. Would you like me to share it with you?
It's anonymous, huh?
It is. I think I should share it.
Well, if it had been signed, I wouldn't want to waste my listeners' time
Why
with
would
something
we do that, right?
something so petty. But if it's anonymous, yeah, you better read it. Go ahead.
Okay, here it goes. This was slipped under my door. It says, "Dear Real Joe Cruz, I want to tell you how great you are. You and Bob make Tall Tales the very best radio in the Western Pacific. I listen every day, at least once. Sometimes I go to Facebook late at night and watch again. Bob is such a terrific host. He's on top of everything. Until I've heard Bob do Zemi Ikutni, I don't even want to watch old episodes of Law & Order on TV. And the card is more exciting than any MMA bouts. Add in the 7th inning stretch and the call to the post at Churchill Downs, plus the exciting halftime show you put on at 1700 every day. Tall Tales is the class of talk radio on Guam. Yesterday, Bob showed his diverse talents by skillfully handling the auction. As usual, Bob's rap was couched in irony. I know Bob's entire international radio listening audience enjoyed the couch auction, especially those listening in Davenport, Iowa. I'd like to sign my name, Real Joe Cruz, but I know if I did, no one would pay any attention to this anonymous letter. Also, Bob holds government officials accountable. I work for GovGuam, and my boss gets pretty worked up about Bob's criticism. They might retaliate if they knew I liked Bob. Keep up the good work. Your pal, Anonymous.
Wow.
I think this should get the blue star, sir.
Well, I got to give it to Ann Anonymous. She sure knows how to call them, right?
Absolutely.
She's got a perfect gift for recognition of talent, too, doesn't she?
She does.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So she thinks the folks in Davenport, Iowa, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
She said I was great.
Yeah, well, who would argue with that? The cult of personality, Real Joe. Well, thanks a lot for reading that into the record, Real Joe Cruz.
You're welcome, sir.
Yeah. So from there we go to the card, and because it is Christmas time,
Family Finance has been serving the people of Guam since 1959, and they'll continue to be there for you in the years to come. Whether you're looking to get a personal loan for that summer vacation or paying off those long overdue bills, Family Finance has got you covered. Apply for a personal loan from $1,000 up to $3,600 by calling Family Finance in Agutya at 475-4545, Upper Tumon at 647-5626, or in Dededo, 633-4473. Family Finance, serving the people of Guam since 1959.
The holiday season is here, and it gives us pause to reflect on the abundance of 2019 and to express our gratitude for Guam, the island we call home, and to all Guamanians. Our team here at Security Title is proud of the work we do to support ourselves and our families, to serve and care for our customers, and to give back to our community. May this season of joy and the new year bring happiness, good health, and prosperity to you and yours. Merry Christmas from all of us at Security Title.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Mescla. Try their featured special for December. Kahlua pork and cabbage, slow roasted, smoke-laced pork, shredded and sautéed with onions and cabbage, served with steamed rice and lomi salmon. Try it today. Available in Agutya and now in Tumon at the Grand Plaza Hotel. For reservations, please call 969-2652.
Now, more Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. Spitting truth like watermelon seeds at a summer picnic. Call now, 888-TALK, 888-8255.
Well, I ought to be going to the 12 Days of Christmas, but unfortunately I left my copy at home, so no 12 Days of Christmas today. We'll pick it up tomorrow with the third day of Christmas. I start out today, this is what I've got on the card. I've got Mike San Nicholas versus Lou and Tina. We've got to go back to the United States of America versus Gods and Arrows, because there's some parts of that we didn't get to. Landstrom versus Last, round 4. And then I've got Pot versus Traffic Safety, U.S. versus China, and the Left versus the Salvation Army. And I've got to look around and find my copy for Antonio Gramsci versus y'all, because I don't have that with me either. Not very well, not as organized as usual today, sports fans. Let me see what I've got here. Oh, yeah, I do have it. I've got the cultural Marxism article about Antonio Gramsci, etc. So let's start out with Mike San Nicholas versus Lou and Tina. Passing, let's see, a measure that would fix a technical problem in a 2016 federal law allowing Guam's war survivors to be paid adjudicated war claims is on the Senate floor. Now, that doesn't mean that someone just got angry and just tossed it on the floor. It means it's in a position where the Senate may deliberate, or as you were, may dispose of it by passing it. According to Michael San Nicholas, H.R. 1365 made the floor with no objections. I continue to thank Republican National Committee of Guam for their assistance. As National Guam Committee member Juan Carlos Benitez is again currently in D.C. assisting our efforts for the bill's passage, San Nicholas said. Current mood is favorable, and we are excited to have a strong local bipartisan support throughout this process for our war survivors who deserve a united approach. However, Governor Lulian Guerrero and many local lawmakers have been pushing Bill 181, which I understand is on the floor of the legislature today, the Guam legislature, which seeks to use up to $7.5 million in local funds to pay some 750 living war survivors and then get reimbursement from the federal government. San Nicholas has said Bill 181 would cause consternation inside the House and Senate by sending mixed signals. He said moving forward with Bill 181 will risk the passage of H.R. 1365 and delay indefinitely war reparations for the more than 3,650 war survivors and their families. The claims would total about $40 million. While local politicians continue to make this point politics, the people can rest assured that their congressmen will not deviate and will fully engage strategically so that we can deliver this for our people, San Nicholas said. I have communicated this to our governor, and hopefully we see good faith at the end stage for this, for the sake of those who have kept the faith all these years. I don't think that's going to happen. You go back to the history here, and going all the way back to 2007 or 2008, we've been able to get a war claims reparations bill through the House on more than one occasion, but they never get past the Senate. So I don't remember if it was 2007 or 2008, Senator John McCain offered Congresswoman Berdalia a deal. I will see to it that that bill goes through the Senate, but this is the only bill that I will shepherd through the Senate. It would pay the heirs of those who actually died during the Japanese occupation, one, or two, people who lived through the occupation but were subject to forced marches, concentration camps, whatever, so long as they were alive on the day that the bill passed. Now, Madeline had been saying, well, you know, we've got to take care of the heirs of those who died between the end of World War II and that day. So she said, she stumped for that. I want a bigger bill. When McCain made his offer, Madeline said, I've got to go back home and check with my constituency. So she goofed around, and the bargain was never struck. Had the bargain been struck, I'd be done talking about something else on the card, because the money would have been paid out. And it would have been paid out of the United States Treasury, not out of Section 8 funds. Madeline really goofed. I suppose it was a matter of arithmetic. You count the number of people who survived, who went through the Japanese occupation and were still alive in 2008. Maybe you're talking about 4,000 folks or so. You count the heirs of those who passed away, you're probably talking 40,000. Where do you get the most votes? So once again, we learned that 100% of nothing isn't anywhere near as much as 25% of something. So we had a really good deal. Pay the worst, pay those who went through it and were still alive out of the Treasury. What did Madeline finally get us? She got exactly what McCain offered, except we got to pay it out of Section 30 funds. So in a sense, we're paying ourselves with our own money. Not a very good deal. On top of that, Madeline's bill did not have language sufficient to allow the Treasury to cut checks to those meritorious claims. So the way it works is there is a claims commission. People apply to the claims commission. The claims commission adjudicates the claims, and if the claim is honored or granted, it's sent to the Treasury, and theoretically the Treasury would send a check. But because of that defect in Madeline's bill, no checks have been sent out. So Michael St. Nicholas, when he gets to Washington, and Madeline never said boo about this. We didn't find out about this until St. Nicholas got to Washington. It was a well-kept secret. Not exactly the kind of thing that Madeline would have wanted been campaigning on, that's for sure. So St. Nicholas gets to Washington. He discovers it. He puts together Bill 1365, works with the Treasury, works with Council in the House of Representatives, introduces it. It passes in the consent calendar in the House. Now, St. Nicholas said, you know, it passed unanimously in the House. Not so. It passed on the consent calendar. So the way the House works, there is a consent calendar, and a member with enough signatures can have a bill placed on the consent calendar. And when the consent calendar is called, if no one objects, the bill passes. One congressman objects, no passage. So that's how it got through the House. And St. Nicholas is trying to lobby at the Senate to get it to go through the Senate. As you mentioned, he gets really good cooperation from local Republicans, including Juan Carlos Benitez, who is the national committeeman for the Republican Party. This is what a national committeeman is. Parties have officers. They have a president, a vice president, secretary, treasurer, tail twister. No, that's the Lions Club. Yeah. And a national committeeman. The national committeeman is a representative on the Republican National Committee. And every jurisdiction has one national committeeman. So there, you know, we have as much clout as the state of California as far as the Republican National Committee is concerned. I know all these things because I am a life member of the Republican National Committee. What do you think of that, Real Joe Cruz?
I like it.
Yeah. And you know what you got? I've got that card. I've had it since 1996. You know where that card will get you?
Where, sir?
If you've got one of those cards that you stick into the terminal on the metro in D.C.,
yeah,
you can get on the metro.
Nice.
Yeah. You could get on the metro even if you didn't have the RNC card. It's the ticket to the metro that get anyhow. So San Nicolas compliments the local Republicans, and he doesn't compliment the local Democrats because the local Democrats have been working at cross purposes with him or to him. Because what happened was, when this all came out, Tina and Governor Lou Leon Guerrero had this bright idea. What we'll do is we'll use local funds and we will pay the adjudicated claims, and then we'll get reimbursed from the federal government. They made a lot of noise, talked about this. St. Nicholas says, don't do that, you guys. You're just going to make it harder for me to get my bill through Congress. But they did anyhow. They made a lot of noise. And a couple of words are appropriate, a couple of terms here. One is grandstanding, and the other is showboating. I think they mean kind of the same thing, but showboating, let's say we're talking basketball, right? And let's say we've got a real hotshot guard. And he brings the ball down the court, and in the process of bringing the ball down the court, he does a behind-the-back dribble. He doesn't do it in order to gain a favorable position on the court or to set himself up for a pass to his big man under the basket. He just does it because he thinks it's neat. So he does his behind-the-back dribble, and everybody in the stands goes, oh, yeah. And he feels really good about that, right? Yeah. That's what showboating is. It doesn't help the team. It doesn't score any points. It doesn't help his teammates. But it makes the showboater look good. I think there's probably a difference between showboating and grandstanding. Next time you see Tina and Lou, ask them what the difference is, because that's what they were doing. They were just grandstanding when they came out with this idea. We'll speed up the process. We'll pay it with local funds and get reimbursed by the feds. They introduced a bill. You know, the guts of the bill said, we'll negotiate. We'll get the governor to negotiate a deal with the Treasury to reimburse. Well, that's not a bill. That's what we would call in legal terms precatory. It's what we hope would happen. Bills ordinarily address things that the local government can make happen. You know, we're going to build a new road from Malolo to Ipan Telefofo. And the roads will be completed in 2 years, and we're appropriating. So, in other words, local legislation causes things to happen. It's not, you know, it's not a draft of a wish of what we'd like to see happen. But that's what they did. So they were, you know, grandstanding and saying, you know, and of course, a lot of virtue signaling there. You know, our poor Manamco, they've waited so long, and, you know, they're all getting old, and people are, you know, we want to get this, you know, the mortality is catching up with us. We really need to get this done right away. And and then, so they said, we're going to try to work this really quickly and try to get checks in people's hands by Liberation Day. So that's what's really going on here. St. Nicholas is doing his best to get this thing through Congress. And, you know, if I were in the Senate, if I were a senator and I knew about this, I might say, well, you know, you got the Section 30 money. You don't need our help. You could have paid, you could have done this without any enactment by Congress at all. So what are you coming to us for now? We got other things to do. We've got a president to impeach. Get out of my face. So, but on the other hand, Tina and Lou are going to be in a position to say, you know, we're really looking out for the Manamco, and we're doing our best that we can to help them to get that money. Yeah. Okay, well, I have a call. I have a caller on the line. It's the legendary Troy Torres. Good afternoon, Troy.
Hi, good afternoon, Bob and Real Joe Cruz.
Good afternoon.
Hi. I'm really honored to be on Tall Tales.
Well,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
it's a very selective process that the real Joe Cruz goes through there. First of all, the phone has to ring, and he can't be in the men's room when it rings. So, congratulations, Troy.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm listening to your discussion on Mike Nicholas and versus Lilian Guerrero and Tina Barnes, and since yesterday when I was reading the news about it, I hadn't read Mike Nicholas's entire statement yet, but I mean, first of all, kudos to him. Good job to him for the work he's doing in Washington, and thank you that he's doing that work much better than the people here on Guam and our elected officials here on Guam are doing their work. And I suspect that the work he's doing comes from great motives and that he's being sincere about wanting to help out and do good things. But it really upsets me how this whole thing has transpired. Like, I'm frustrated and I'm really irritated and annoyed at our legislature and our governor, who from the beginning were trying to, it's very obvious to me, they were just trying to foil Mike Nicholas's agenda because they didn't want him to get any credit for the work that he's doing to help the Manamku, but basically to save an initiative that former Congresswoman Madeline Medallo failed to do, and it was, and like you said, she realized that she failed to do it when she was exiting the House, and she didn't say boo about it. I love that, by the way. That's not part of my lexicon. She didn't say boo about it, and the guy was just trying to fix her mistake and get war claims to the Manamku, and these guys just stood in his way, all for what? Political credit? It really upsets me, just how this thing has twisted and turned in the political landscape on Guam. And I'm just happy that Lou and Tina and Madeline Medallo were wrong and that Mike Nicholas was right, and that despite Lou, Madeline, and Tina being wrong and trying to put up all those roadblocks in Mike Nicholas's way, that it didn't work, much like none of the stuff that they ever tried to do ever works. I'm glad this didn't work as well.
Well, I agree with you 100%, Troy. And, you know, sometimes what we need when we see darkness, we need a palabrin.
Namalaki candid.
Candid, yeah.
You know, I don't know if I can take a tangent here, just real quick. But yesterday I had a chance to witness a session of the CNMI Legislative House of Representatives, and I couldn't help, Bob, but feel jealous or envious. It's one of those two, jealous or envious, that they have, and despite the politics and the disagreements and whatever it is, right, between the really heavy topics that they were talking about, I couldn't help but notice that, by and large, their legislators are smart compared to our legislators, who are dumb, by and large, except for a few. And they not only did they have a command of parliamentary procedure, it was very efficient how they rolled through their session. Their agenda was very efficient. It was like, it was so detailed too in their notice to the public of their agenda items and what they were going to talk about. I went into a couple of the offices of these representatives, like the floor leader, J.P. Subban. I had an interview with him. His office is comprised of maybe, like, I want to say 400 square feet of space, or it's just his chamber, which is a small office with one of those National Office Supply, like, teacher desks, not one of those Ethan wood desks that our senators have in their grandiose palaces, and a secretary or some kind of other office worker. He had one employee. So I found out that most of, or all of these representatives have one or two employees working for them. They have a legislative bureau, which is, in our terms, they're classified merit-based employees who are not at the whim of the majority party or whatever. These representatives are in command of the issues that they have in front of them. They know about the bills that they're talking about. They don't look at their phones throughout their entire session. They weren't looking at their phones, and they didn't have staffers tapping them on their backs, bringing documents to them, or whispering things in their ears. These guys, they were very envious and jealous of their legislature, because our legislature sucks by and large. I just wanted to raise that point.
Well, yes, but Troy, that's all very commendable, and I really applaud anybody in a legislature with a small office and a small staff. That's a man after my own heart. But there's one way where we really top the CNMI.
How's that?
10 of our 15 senators are females. Yeah. So
their female representatives in the House, they said some of the most beautiful things. One of them was in Chamorro, was Congresswoman Janet Maratija, and of course the impassioned speech by Congresswoman Tina Sablan about the need to investigate their governor. I didn't see, and there's one other representative who's a female, but she was on an excused absence. And well, I just got to say, male or female, the brain power in that legislature blows away the brain power in ours, and it's just very envious. I'm very envious of it.
Well, okay, Troy. I hear what you're saying. So thanks a lot for
do a better job.
Thanks a lot for sharing, and keep that light shining there in Candid News, huh?
Thanks, Bob. Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate it. Bye.
Okay, so boy, we ran a little over here on the break. So go through the break in about 2 minutes, and then that big halftime show that Troy's probably been waiting for.
Water. It covers nearly 3/4 of our Earth. From vast oceans to millions of rivers and streams, we're all concerned with protecting our world's water. But none is more important than the water you and your family drink and use throughout your home. A Connecticut water treatment system can improve your water so that your family is using the best water in the world. Connecticut, for refreshing ideas on water.
American Water Tech. A passion for improving lives through better water.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
A homeowner's policy protects much more than just your house. It also protects you against claims from someone being hurt on your property. If a visitor is injured at your place, how much are you covered for? The smart thing to do is get the answer today.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Hey, great bumper music, Real Joe Cruz.
Thank you, sir.
And we're back to those people born in the 1930s, 1940s, and 1950s.
I like it too.
The golden age of music. Let's talk vocabulary for a second. Jealousy versus envy, okay? Jealousy describes a feeling of fear that something will be taken away. Envy describes an emotion that it is an emotion that a person would like to have something. So if the real Joe Cruz came tooling up here in a 1932 three-window Ford coupe, I would be really envious because I'd like to have that car myself. I would be overcome by envy. Now, if I had a 1932 Ford three-window coupe, and the real Joe Cruz came along and said, I have two, as you were, the real Joe Cruz came along and said, I found your keys and I found a signed certificate of title. I now own that 1932 Ford three-window coupe. I would be jealous.
Nice.
Get it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, a husband or wife could be jealous, right? And, a person in the workplace could be envious. Wow, I sure envy the real Joe Cruz. He's climbed the ladder so quickly here at the point. Okay, let's break for that big halftime show that we've all been waiting for.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Fun at Democrats. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. President Trump mocking House Democrats during a rally Tuesday night, calling the articles unveiled impeachment light.
They are going to impeach the 45th President of the United States and your favorite president, I think.
The president with supporters in Hershey, Pennsylvania.
So the big question